Ring in the new year and count down to 88 live with Channel 5.
We bailed each other out of the superstorm. Our hearts went out to the families of the victims of the crash of Northwest Flight number 255 in Detroit. And we celebrated together the World Series victory of our Minnesota Twins. Those were just some of the top news stories of 1987. And these are the people who brought them to us. Good morning, I'm Bob Bruce, and welcome to Twin Cities Live. What was it like to be right in the middle of some of the biggest news stories that happened in the past year in the state? Well, we're happy to have with us, and it is hard to get members of the Eyewitness News reporting staff together in one place at one time because they are always moving around, covering stories. Let me introduce them all to you before we get into it. First of all, from the Eyewitness News Sports Department, we have Mark Stevens. We have Mr. Mike Binkley from the News Department, Kevin Berger, Dr. Michael Breen, Tom Garrison, our investigative reporter, Mr. Dave Andrews from the News Department, and of course, Eyewitness News reporter and anchor, Mark Sapelsa. Thank you for being with us. I should mention, I said it's hard to get them all together in one place at one time because they're always working. Pat Milan was going to be with us today, but he is covering a story in Iowa. We'll talk about that in just a moment. But first, let's go right to the story that I think really was the most exhilarating, fun time that Minnesotans have had in years, and Mark, that would have to be the World Series victory. What was it like for you as a reporter? Was that the ultimate as far as being a sports reporter?
It's almost impossible to describe it because I don't think any of us, including the players and the fans as well, nobody thought it was going to end the way it did. When they won the West down in Texas, we had a pretty good idea that it was going to get to that point. You know, they had a big lead. It was just a matter of when they were going to clinch it. Then when they went to Detroit and won a couple of games, well, that just amazed us even more. And then we figured there's no way they're going to win the World Series. And then it just kept going and going and going. And what it culminated in that night was just incredible.
What was it like being a reporter, the amount of hours of covering the World Series and the travel? I know it was extremely wet in the locker room. Here's the videotape.
It gets hazardous. Cleaning bill goes way up those times.
What's the feeling like that? Do you kind of celebrate? I mean, did you feel like you were part of it?
I had just as much fun as the players did. That particular video there is from the West clinching celebration down in Texas, which was the most intense night I think I've ever been a part of. It was more so than when they clinched the American League title and the World Series because it was just the local people. There wasn't all this national press. It was a huge locker room down there in Arlington, and this was something new to them. They'd never celebrated before, and boy, I'll tell you, they let loose.
Behind the scenes, working in the newsroom, I know that there was much more going on than just going to the game and coming home. Give us an idea of the sort of things during the stretch drive for the Western Division pennant and then the American League pennant and all the way through. The amount of time and what was actually going on in the newsroom.
Well, for me, a perfect example was 34 straight days of work. Nobody got any time off during the World Series, and that was an accepted fact. We just knew that that's the way it was going to be. And it was trying to come up with something new all the time to show. I mean, how many times can you talk to Kirby Puckett or Tom Kelly and try and get a different angle on all of it? But that's what we were doing. That's what the producers were doing. We were constantly trying to knock heads to come up with something new because we had pretty much covered everything you possibly could from these guys, and we just kept on trying and trying.
Now, how many different angles can you get of Tom Kelly saying, we'll take it one game at a time?
And we decided to make a lot of fun of that. That was one of the angles that you had to take with Tom Kelly.
Before I move on, what was the worst moment? Was there any moment in there where things got a little tough on you as a reporter?
A little bit tough as a reporter. Towards the end, the actual World Series itself, when there was so much national press there, to try and do post-game, which is all the interviews after the game, it used to be so easy. We could just walk in and take care of ourselves. Instead, we had hundreds of people that we didn't know who they were, obnoxious people from New York and Los Angeles just barging in right in front of us. And the players, you could see, we'd be making eye contact with the guys that we were used to dealing with all season long, and we just couldn't get at them to do our usual thing, which was a lot more intimate.
In essence,
it became a fight to try and get the information, and it really didn't have to be. But I guess that's the way they're used to doing things in the East.
Bob, I have a comment about that as well, about the battle. Mike and I, and some of the other folks here, were in the crowd that it just erupted after Game 7 when they won the World Series. We were out in the middle of all the celebrators, and we were celebrating too, but what happened to me was I went down to Hennepin Avenue, just see if anything happens down there. The photographer and I went down there.
Well, there are a lot of things that happen on Hennepin Avenue. Depends on what night you're there. But
well, it was quite a night. We were on one corner, and we saw just virtually almost like a mob scene erupt. We saw people swarming around an MTC bus, climbing on top of it and rocking it. So I've got these bags strapped on me. The photographer's got the camera, and he says, I'm going to run down there and try and get a shot of that. So he starts running down there, and I'm trying to run after him. So I'm running after him, and I lose him in the crowd. So in the middle of all this, we've lost one another, and I'm running around yelling, Ian, Ian, at the top of my voice, and people are going, Kevin, kiss me, we won. And I'm like,
it's fun being a news reporter, isn't it? Right in the midst
Go Twins,
yeah. Speaking of being in the midst of things, Mike, because you and Kevin both covered the storm, along with some of the other reporters, the great superstorm that we had.
Right.
Here you have a situation where a storm is going on, and all the media outlets are telling everyone, stay at home, don't go outside, it's very dangerous, don't walk in the water, a power line could fall into it, you could get electrocuted. And where do we find Mike and Kevin but standing out in the middle of Highway 12 with water up to here? I mean, what's it like being in the midst of something like that?
Well, she had it the worst, but yeah, me and my photographer were just talking about that the other day. When we were going on the air telling people, take cover, stay in your basements, you know, take all precautions, don't go out unless it's absolutely necessary, we're the ones who are out there.
Let's go!
Yeah, exactly. On the day of the superstorm, that was my day off, and I was called in on my day off, and there you see some of the flooding victims coming out of their apartments. That was the worst rain that I have ever experienced in my life, you know, and I'm driving in from Richfield, 20 miles away, and, you know, concerned about whether I'm going to make it in. And as it turned out later on, I ended up being there the entire night, and as it turned out, I went home the next day and found out that the garage in my apartment complex had been completely flooded out. You know, all the cars in there were completely totaled. So that was one time when I really said thank you to my assignment editor for calling me in on my day off.
I remember the shot vividly. I was coming back from a charity function way up in Anoka, not far from where the tornado came down. And I came down Highway 100, and I went underneath Highway 12 there, Turner's Crossroad area. And there was about 3 foot of water at that particular time. About 40 minutes later, I was at home, turned on the TV, saw Kevin, and you're out there standing in this water up to your waist almost. You had to be a little concerned, weren't you, as far as what was going on? Lightning all over the place?
Yeah, I think sometimes afterwards you go, ooh, well, gee, maybe that wasn't so smart, but you sort of get caught up in it. The funniest thing about that story, and like Mike, I came in at 2 o'clock and then worked, I think, until 4 o'clock the next day, only stopping at home for clean underwear because I was so drenched. But the funniest thing that happened to me was I had gotten a permanent in my hair that day, and the man who does my hair said, I can't wait to see how this looks on TV. And I was like a drowned rat standing in it, thinking, well, that's how it looks.
Kevin, on a more serious note, you've covered all kinds of stories, but I'm sure in your career, one of the most tragic and one of the most personally moving would have to be the Northwest crash. If you could tell me, being a news reporter, how you found out suddenly you were going to be in Detroit. How did that all take place? Because I don't think a lot of people who aren't within the business realize how reporters are just suddenly called at the drop of a hat.
It was a Sunday night. I was home with my husband and some friends, including a man who's a reporter for the Star Tribune, who's a good friend of ours. The phone rang, and they said, there's been a plane crash. We need you to come in immediately. I said, do I have time to take a shower? They said, no. So I came right in, hooked up with a photographer. They chartered us a plane. And what was the scariest thing about this, I think, was we flew through a storm right into that airport where there had just been this terrible crash. And it makes you uneasy. You know, in this day and age, well, this is, then 36 hours later, we were taken to the crash site. It was just an ordinary stretch of highway. It was absolutely littered with the remains. I mean, for 156 people, this is where life ended. Now people get on airplanes, bye, see you later, families going home, people on vacation, business trips. And, you know, seconds after takeoff, bang. I mean, there's their suitcases still packed, their shoes, their tennis rackets, things that they're going to take with them, not knowing that it's just going to stop. Put out flags where every body was found. And to go out to that particular site and see, I mean, it had the feeling of a cemetery. There were news reporters from all over the country there, and news reporters get together, sort of talking tough and acting tough, but boy, was it quiet when we went.
Bob, I can relate to that. I covered the Galaxy crash, which you remember about 3 years ago now in Reno.
Reno, yeah.
When some 70 people, mostly from Minnesota, were killed, and it's got to be the toughest story you can ever cover. It was a scene that you don't want to ever see again. In the course of covering it, you have to put it aside, your own feelings, and try to do the best you can to cover the story and report the facts. But I can tell you, for weeks and months after the fact, I had vivid memories and nightmares about it, and it's got to be the toughest thing a reporter goes through.
I remember, Bob, when Kevin, I think it was the first day you came back from Detroit, she sat on the set at 5 o'clock for just a little debriefing, just a little chit-chat about what happened. I think you had tears in your eyes. Well, you spent about a minute and 30 seconds just talking about going to that site, and I remember you had tears in your eyes when you ended up.
It's a sort of a shell shock kind of a situation when you're done with that, and it's awful. That's the only word for it.
I think sometimes in the newsroom, because so many stories come through there of murders and mass murders and plane crashes, did you feel that before you went and covered the story that you had become a little bit desensitized to some of that?
Well, you know, I think in many ways reporters tend to be like police officers. You see a lot of awful things. You see people at their very worst. You see tragedy. You see miserable things. You see man's inhumanity to man, things that you just, when you think you've seen it all. And so, like police officers, I think sometimes we sort of make wisecracks, and we make jokes, and there's a certain gallows humor that goes on, and that's the way that you handle it, and perhaps that's a good release. But there's some things that there's no way that there's anything funny about it.
You know, Bob, I often thought that journalism was a lot like medicine, and I didn't see the analogy till I went into television, but you have to function in a kind of emotional vacuum. You can't afford to react to everything you're seeing. When I went to Africa and I saw a lot of starving babies, your job is to function, and as much as you'd like to be emotional, that's not why you're there. That's not how you help the situation.
I think at this point, this is where years of experience and professionalism, it just sort of kicks in, and you do, to an extent, do it on autopilot because you have to.
Yeah. We'll continue in just a moment. We'll continue looking back at some of the top stories of 1987 with the Eyewitness News reporting staff when Twin Cities Live continues in a moment.
If the upkeep on your home's exterior has got you down, here's a fabulous opportunity that you can't afford to pass up. It's Sears Siding Warehouse Clearance Sale, so don't delay. If you call this toll-free number right now during this limited time sale, you can save 20% on siding from Sears. That's right, 20%, the biggest savings of the year. You see, at this time of year, we need more warehouse space to make room for our incoming inventory. So in order to move out our in-stock siding, we're cutting prices and passing the savings on to you. So whether your home is wood or stucco and needs an entire facelift, or if it's a brick combination with cracked, peeling moldings, eaves, and overhangs, siding from Sears will enhance the look of your home. In addition, long-lasting, maintenance-free siding will increase the resale value and save you the bother and expense of frequent repainting. And siding from Sears, combined with energy-saving 3/4-inch foam wall insulation, will cut your heating and cooling costs so that you not only save money now, you continue to save all year round. Best of all, when you deal with Sears, you can be sure the job is done right. Call this toll-free number now during our Siding Warehouse Clearance Sale, and Sears will arrange for a free in-home estimate. Help you select siding that's just right for your needs. Show you convenient credit plans designed to fit almost any budget, and even arrange for professional installation. And remember, Sears Siding Warehouse Clearance Sale doesn't come along every day. So if you've been thinking about siding your home, now's the time to call this toll-free number. You can take advantage of the year's greatest savings and enjoy all the beauty and satisfaction of siding from Sears at an unbelievable 20% off.
This is a limited time offer, so act now. Call 1-800-862-1100 for your free in-home estimate. Remember, that number is 1-800-862-1100. That's 1-800-862-1100.
A man's work is never done, and a man's work is in the home. Is that right? Well, at least for some men it is. More and more men are staying home to be the primary caregiver of their children while mom goes out and fights the corporate battle. Don't believe me? Well, you'll want to be in our studio audience this coming Monday, January 4th, when we will be joined by real-life Mr. Moms and find out what it's like for these men who stay home and care for the house and the children and the whole shebang. For free studio tickets, the number to call, 641-1298. Monday, January 4th, as we kick off the new year here on Twin Cities Live with real-life Mr. Moms. Welcome back to Twin Cities Live. We're kind of wrapping up a little bit of 1987 with the Eyewitness News reporting staff, looking back on some of the top stories of 1987. Did you ever want to be a news reporter?
I think it would be too hard a job. And for any of you guys, has there ever been a story that you really worked hard on and your editor pulled it, or your producer, and it got you so mad that you wanted to kill him?
Never. That happened to me about 2 weeks ago. We had a 4-minute follow-up on a story that we've been working on, and it did not pass all the legal tests that were necessary. I still disagree with that philosophically,
What do you
but
do
that
then?
happens.
What do you do?
Well, I think there's a process that you've got to admit that you've got to go through, and if you're going to get sued because of the result of the story that you do, that's not good. And so, obviously, I want to continue to work, but it's, you know, we write the stories, we research them, we do our best to put them together in a way that we think we can tell the story, and if we haven't done it enough to meet the legal tests, that's it.
Mike, let me go ahead.
I was going to say, kind of along the same lines, though, is time restrictions. It all depends on what else is going on during the day. You may have a great story and it may not get dropped, but it may get cut back so much because there is so much else going on that day. Whereas if it's a real slow news day, you may have a story that you don't like very well, and there isn't a whole lot to it, but still they tell you stretch. You know, it just doesn't make sense.
That's true. People think that the most important stories of the day will get all the time, when in fact, it's a function of how well you sell a story. You know, there are a lot of egos in that newsroom, and everybody thinks their story, hard to believe.
No.
And everybody thinks their story is the most important. So they rush to the assignment desk, say, guess what I've got, and we try to sell our stories.
For you, Mike, and I should call you Doctor.
No, I call Mike is fun.
For you, Dr. Breen. What was the big story? I would imagine AIDS would be right up there.
AIDS would be the most important story. I would say, if I were to characterize AIDS this year, it was the year of the great heterosexual scare, where at the beginning of the year, everybody said, wait, AIDS is suddenly something that I have to worry about. I'm a sexually active young person. I engage in heterosexual sex. Do I have to be worried about AIDS? We saw mass numbers of people getting blood tests. And then toward the end of the year, people started looking at each other and saying, wait a second, my friends haven't gotten AIDS, I haven't gotten AIDS, people I know in singles bars haven't gotten AIDS. Was this a lot of media hype? Were we being scared for no reason? It looks now like about 90% of the cases of AIDS are always going to be gay and bisexual related. The other 10%, about 80% of those 10%, 4 out of 5, will involve inner cities and minorities. That still leaves about 2%, 3% of cases that will involve maybe most of the people in this audience, kind of white, middle class, suburban types. And I don't want to minimize AIDS. You always have a tightrope here. Nobody is going to condone promiscuity, and no one's going to condone the kind of irresponsible behavior that may lead to AIDS. On the other hand, the greatest risk, 98% of cases, are going to involve either gay or bisexual men, or they're going to involve minorities.
Something that I think that has happened with AIDS is that sometimes as a reporter, you're almost embarrassed because some of the things, sometimes I say, I can't believe the things we say on TV. A few years ago in another city, when the toxic
You haven't watched
shock,
this show very often then, because...
the toxic shock syndrome thing came up,
yeah,
which women could become vulnerable to because of tampons, and I was a producer at the time, and I had an anchorman who refused to say the word tampon. Well, now, with AIDS, we talk about so many things, and that's another thing that has changed in the reporting is these things are very important public issues. We must discuss them. And it's sometimes, you know, I think that there's a certain comfort level, despite
Kevin, one public issue that we've discussed many times on this program, the abuse of children. The Lois Juergens trial was something that, if you're a parent or anybody who cares for children, upset a lot of us. You covered some of that trial.
Yeah, I was there on the day that she was found guilty and on the day that she was sentenced. And I think I knew a number of reporters who said they couldn't read the paper, they couldn't stand to think about this. I found it very haunting myself, being the mother of a young son, and hearing the allegations of the brutality that this child endured so many years ago. It was quite an upsetting experience to cover this, to even try and comprehend what had gone on within this.
See, for all of you, I think the one line here that I think most viewers would continually come back to is, how do you separate yourselves emotionally from what's happening? Because you are human beings.
Well, in some
you
cases,
have your own families.
In some cases, you can't. I covered it was in White Bear Lake. Lois Jurgen's other adopted son, his name was Robert, he presented an award to the police officers who essentially did the legwork to convict his mother for the death of his adopted brother. It was an incredibly emotional thing. He talked about what he had been through, what his family had been through, and everyone there cried, myself and my cameraman included. It was just too overwhelming not to be moved by that.
Mark?
We always talk about being objective on stories, and I remember having Journalism 001, freshman year of college, and my professor was a veteran in television news, and he said, you'll never cover a story. You'll never cover a story objectively. And I said, what do you mean? What are you talking about? And he said, you're always going to have some feelings about a story. Whatever story you're covering, you're right. You lean one way, you try and be fair about it. You are fair about it when you report it, but you always have feelings.
And I think you have to take that emotion and make it work for you, and tell the people what is really going on there. You conveyed that emotion in that story.
Good morning, you're on Twin Cities Live. Go right ahead with your question or comment.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Hello, Bob?
Yes, go right
ahead.
ahead.
My name is Sharon Gary. I'm out in the Wayzata area. When I was a late teen, early 20s, I couldn't stand watching the news. Okay, now I'm in my upper 30s, and I can't live without the news. And I just wanted to
What was the change? Why change?
You know, I don't know. I think age does it to people when they just finally want to know.
Age does a lot of things to people, but I don't know if that's one of them.
Well, it's doing it to me. And I just want to say, whatever channel I happen to be watching, I always switch to Channel 5. I feel that they have the best news coverage. Now, my question for this morning is I only have one critical part on reporting. I can't understand, and maybe you've covered this since I've been on hold, but I can't understand why, as a reporter, if something tragic happens, such as an airline crash or a fire or a car accident, why they go to their immediate family, not even 24 hours after or hours after, and say, how are you feeling at this moment that you're the only survivor from this crash?
Yeah, this is a question that has been asked time and time again when it comes to journalism. Maybe several of you want to address this.
Well, I've talked to several relatives in situations like that, and I think most reporters, at least I've never forced myself on any relative, and I've found in many cases, virtually in all the cases, most people are willing and want to talk about their deceased relative. And I don't know if it's part of the grieving process, but many have come to me in situations like that and say, we'd like to talk. We'd like to tell what a nice person this man or woman was. And I've never stuck my foot in someone's door. We have called relatives on the phone, and many times they'll say, no, we don't want to comment. And as far as the reporters I know, you drop it at that point. Only when they're willing, and I'm surprised by how many people are willing to discuss what has happened. I think it must be part of the grieving process, and I don't think most reporters do try to force themselves on relatives.
One thing that continually surprises me about working within the newsroom is that just when, as Kevin said, you thought you'd seen it all, something else comes in, and when we continue in a moment, Tom will have some video for us that is unbelievable. We'll continue right after this.
Are you tired of cereals that have over-sugared, over-fibered, and generally toyed with your breakfast? If you're ready for honest taste in a cereal, you're ready for new Quaker Oats Squares. Wholesome, honest-to-goodness Quaker Oats Squares. Quaker Oats toasted into crispy, crunchy little squares with delicious whole grain taste. Honest taste from an honest face. New Quaker Oats Squares.
Hi. You know, in 30 years in television, one thing I've never understood, Where on Saturday mornings are the programs for us grown-ups? Well, here's an answer. It's called Great Weekend, and it's a Saturday morning hour of news, weather, entertainment suggestions, medical and money advice, sports, and commentary. That's where I come in. My name's Jack Perkins, and I sure hope that you will join us.
Watch Great Weekend, the adult choice.
If you've been hurt in any accident, you can talk to an attorney about all your rights, and it won't cost you a cent. We'll even come to you, your home or hospital. Just call Swore and Gatto, 690-4300, 690-4300. It's free, so don't miss out on any cash or benefits you may have coming. Call 690-4300 right now, 690-4300. Swore and Gatto. They'll go after the most money in the least time, and they'll come to you. Call 690-4300.
Chevrolet presents the Stroh's Monster Truck Winter Nationals. Part of the Redman TNT Motorsports Series, coming January 8th and 9th to St. Paul Civic Center Arena.
Dr. Michael Breen was just talking about AIDS, and have you been, when you're gone to your dentist or doctor's office lately, have you noticed anything unusual? Anything a little different than from in the past? Have you noticed they've been wearing more surgical gloves and masks than ever before? Now, why are they doing this? What are they protecting? Who are they protecting, the patient or themselves? You may be surprised to the answer to that question. Because of the threat of AIDS. That's why. We invite you to come down to our studio on Tuesday, January 5th, as we get some answers from the people who deal with that fear of AIDS every day, the members of the medical profession who at times have wondered if they are saving lives at the expense of their own. It's a very controversial question. When should a doctor draw the line when treating a patient if they have AIDS? The number to call for reservations, 641-1298. We are back, and I want to, the video that you had in The Exorcist, you called your new series, this was bizarre.
There are some stories that you will do, and you know it as soon as you do it, only once in your lifetime. And I think this video that we're going to see here is pretty incredible stuff to look at, and that's what we said at the time. There's no way, though, any report can convey the emotion, the noise, of these people. Demons are coming out of them, they believe, and truly believe it. For 4.5 hours, we witnessed this at a small church in Indiana. And the reason we went there was because of a doctor here in Minnesota who believes that some people are truly inhabited by demons, and he would attempt to refer some patients to that church.
In the midst of that, I mean, how did you feel?
At the time, my wife wanted to know as soon as I got back how I felt about it, and was I scared? And at the time, no, you're not. Kevin and some others have said you just concentrate on doing what you've got to do. But when I got back and had to log all those tapes and sit in an editing bay for about 4 hours and watch those tapes, it did get to me. And for about 2 weeks, I could not sleep very well at night. I had to work out how I felt about demons, about deliverance.
Did you ever think to yourself, people are never going to believe this? When we put this on the air, they're not going to believe that this is for real.
Well, and I can't judge whether it's for real or not, but I think your biggest task as a reporter at that point is to really strive to keep your own viewpoints out of it and to present it equally so that people can judge.
Mark?
Tom, what did they... I didn't even ask you about this when you came back. You watched it for 4.5 hours. They're flailing around. Did they get up and walk out at the end of the 4.5 hours, or what did they do?
It was extremely calm right at the end of it. In fact, these people quickly...
4.5 hours of doing all that, you run out of energy, you'd think.
It's very intense. They work with you. They yell things at you. They call things at you. It's extremely intense experience.
Good morning. You're on Twin Cities Live. Go right ahead. Good morning, caller. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'd like to ask Dr. Breen about his decision to be a journalist instead of a regular medical doctor, and I'd like to, even though it's absolutely none of my business, like to know if the money is better being a journalist.
Of course it's your business. You're a viewer of this program. You can ask
He's
anything
out
you
for
want.
one. It's not for the money. He said the money was better, that he's way off base, and I should answer it just because he thinks that. I've been asked that question time and again, and I don't want to dominate the next 45 minutes of your time, but basically, I saw a lot of people who... I expected to see a lot of magic when I was interning in a hospital. Instead, I saw 80% of the patients I was seeing had self-induced illnesses. They had alcohol-related, cigarette-related, obesity, lifestyle-related diseases. And I found myself wondering, why didn't somebody approach those people 20 years before? And at the same time, I noticed that I was having to kick patients out of my clinic because they wanted so much information about their bodies. And they were just coming to the realization that they were in control of their own health. So I had a desire to do this, and I saw a need for it, and it's worked out very well.
Dave, one part of being a reporter is that many times you have to cover hearings and proceedings of political things, court hearings. You covered the Northwest Airlines, the investigation into that. What's it like covering one of those things where you have so much information thrown out there, yet you're responsible for trying to boil that down to a minute and a half and explain it to everyone so everybody knows what's going on?
That's the most frustrating part, I think, of any TV reporter's job, is trying to boil down masses of information into a minute and a half story. It's sometimes it is almost impossible to give the full story. You can't give the full story. You have to give the impression of what went on in as many important details as you can. But you also realize that if people are interested, and people who want to be well educated about the news have to combine reading the newspaper and reading news magazines with watching their nightly newscast, because in television news, as much as we'd like to, we just can't tell the full story, and I think everybody would agree with that.
You have a question.
Why do they have to show the bloody faces on people and stuff?
On the television news?
Yeah.
That's a question a lot of people ask. What? Do sometimes we perhaps go a little overboard in showing some of that?
I think we do. I think it's been more so in the past than I think now a lot of news departments are getting a lot more sensitive to that. We generally have a policy at murder scenes that we do not show the body of the dead person lying on the ground, and I don't think we do that at all anymore. We at least wait until they've covered the body with a cloth and are carrying it away. I personally am offended by a lot of things that I see myself, and I don't think there really is a need for it in many cases.
Why did you decide to get into this business, and how did you get to the point where you're at now?
What point is that?
Who grows up to be a reporter? I mean, now, Mark, I would imagine were you involved in sports? Is that why you fell into sports?
I'm like any frustrated jock, I guess. I didn't. I'm not playing for the Mets in center field. I grew up in Brooklyn, New York, so I always wanted to play for the Mets. When I knew I couldn't, this was the route I decided to go. When I was about 13, I had a pretty good idea of what I wanted to do. I've been very lucky that I've been able to fulfill at least that half of the dream.
See, that's sort of a natural progression for someone who's been in sports to fall into sportscasting. But what about for the news reporters? I mean,
I'm a product of the Watergate era, really. I was right out of college in 1973, and that tells you how old I am right now. I was working on Capitol Hill in Washington for a congressman, and I thought I wanted to get into politics. But that was the summer of the Watergate hearings, and I was fascinated by that. They were on TV every day, on live TV. I used to sneak out of my job and go sit in on those, and I'd see Dan Rather and Morley Safer and the network reporters out in the hallways interviewing the senators. And it just really turned me on and excited me about television news reporting. That's how I got into it.
What about the rest of you?
I got into it by mistake. I had been in college, didn't know what I wanted to do with my life, didn't want to stay in college. I was an English major because I like to read books. And I was looking for something else to do. I was offered a job at the radio station in my small hometown of 6,000 people.
You started in radio.
Started in radio, and the first day I did it, I went, this is it.
Where did you start, Mark? Where did it all begin for you?
You know, it was like in high school, driving the car. How many times did your dad tell you not to punch the radio when you're driving the car? I used to do that a lot. So I was interested in the media and those voices, and why do they do that? And how do they make those sounds? So radio's where it started. My roommate said, why don't you try this campus TV station? I said, geez, I don't know. I did it, liked it, stayed, and it just kind of like fell into place.
We've got to take a break. We'll be back in just a moment, all right? And we'll get a chance for your question. We'll be right back.
This is my husband, Harry, the New Year's Day couch potato, leaving me with nothing to do. Until now, because on New Year's Day, Marshall's is having a special sale where I can save an extra 25% off Marshall's already low clearance prices. Now that beats department store regular prices. And football. So goodbye, Harry. Goodbye, football. Goodbye, department stores. And hello, Marshall's.
Marshall's, department store brand names for less every day.
I've tried my hand at a lot of things in life. Carpenter, truck driver, oil well rigger. I'll tell you what, entering American Family Sweepstakes is the best thing I ever did.
We ever did.
They won millions. Now you may win $10 million. Just like me. That's wonderful. You may be next. $10 million, all yours. From American Family Publishers. Beat this date, January 29th. Enter now.
I'm gonna miss you more than you're gonna miss me.
Juergens showed no emotion. Outside, she seemed irritated after...
Northwest 255, runway 3 center. Turn right, heading 060, clear for takeoff.
To Gaetti for the first time ever, the Minnesota Twins.
A look back at 1987 by the news people who brought you the stories. Eyewitness News Review, Thursday.
2 years ago, I was hurt in a car accident. I couldn't work. I didn't have any money coming in. I was afraid I was going to lose everything. I got a lawyer. Not just any lawyer. I got someone who knew how to handle injury cases. I called the law firm of Pritzker and Meyer. They came through for me. Pritzker and Meyer got me the money I deserved.
Pritzker and Meyer. No fee unless we get a settlement for you. 333-7151.
Hi, I'm Wendy Lubavitch. Be sure to join me later today for Eyewitness News Midday at 11:30. We'll have a live report on the New Year's Eve celebrations tonight. Eyewitness News Midday.
We are back, and we're sort of reminiscing about some of the stories from 1987 with the Eyewitness News reporting staff. Go ahead.
Well, one of the stories that was prominent in the news was the war toys controversy, and there was a debate over what these toys are doing to our children. And I was wondering how the team feels if there were to be marketed an Eyewitness News action figure doll package.
Barbie and Ken?
It probably wouldn't sell.
And how they take the role as role models for our children, because there are people out there that see these kind of people on television, and they say, that's what I want to be, and how...
They feel they have to be role models. Because people look up to people. I'll start with you, David. Just as you looked up to the network reporters in Watergate, do you think that there are many college journalism students or whatever that look to you and say, gee, you know, someday I want to be Dave Andrews?
Well, I'm sure there's a lot of misguided people out there. I assume so.
Good morning to you. You're on Twin Cities Live. Go right ahead. Go ahead, caller.
Yes, I'm calling. I would like to comment on something Dr. Breen said, but I want to kind of compliment KSTP because I really enjoy their coverage.
Thank you.
And my question is whether or not Dr. Breen could clarify what he meant about the incidence of AIDS being most predominant in minority communities, given his comments that for heterosexuals and bisexuals, they had the greatest numbers of AIDS cases.
Well, what I said was that 90% of all AIDS cases will involve usually gay and bisexual men, but of the other 10% spread by heterosexual intercourse, about 4 out of 5 of those cases so far have involved minority communities. I know that's a very, very sensitive statistic to pass on because it seems to lend itself to a whole variety of interpretations, and I don't interpret them in one way or another. All I know are those are the facts. You want to let people know what the facts are. At the same time, you don't want to say things that sound inherently racist or over-controversial. I think that's useful information for anybody to know, but I worry myself that it'll be misinterpreted.
There's a certain amount of blaming the messenger that goes on. Unfortunately, a lot of the news that we have to bring is bad or controversial. We don't make these things up. I'm sure that, you know, it's it doesn't mean anything to you, this statistic. You have nothing
No.
of your person invested in this. This is simply the facts and to pass it on. And yet sometimes people view us, the facts that we present, that somehow we're injecting our opinion, that we're racist or sexist or whatever, and that's a problem.
And a good example with AIDS is the condom issue. You know, boy, we just gave the facts about condoms and the fallacies and the problems with them, and next thing you know, you're interpreted as this kind of right-wing fanatic who, you know, is making a moral issue out of AIDS, when in fact you're trying to give, right. And
ask you, it can be an uncomfortable situation. And many times reporters are placed in very uncomfortable situations. Now, Mike, I remember a story, the Ryden family, when you were in a situation that could have gone either way. If you could explain it for us.
Exactly, and it goes right along with what we were talking about earlier, about being with families in a very either tragic situation, a very tense situation. This was a family who had a son aboard the USS Stark, the ship that was shot by Iraqi jets in the Persian Gulf. More than a day went on before they could say how many people had died in this attack. And there was one family in Minneapolis in particular that we were with that was still awaiting word. And I think we have a film clip of when they finally did get the
Now, we'll take a look at it now when they finally got the word about their son and his whereabouts.
No, here it is.
Hello? Yes. Ryden, yes. Oh, thank God. Oh, thank God. That's it. That's it. He's home. He's all right.
Yeah.
All right. God.
How did you react to that? It could have gone either way. When that phone rang, how did you prepare yourself for what could happen?
Honestly, that is as emotionally involved as I've ever been in a story. And I should compliment Ian Logan, the photographer, for capturing the moment there. Many times during the night there, we had said to the family, listen, you know, if you don't want us to be here, you know, we should probably leave. And the hours were going on. We probably asked that of them 5 different times, and every time they said, no, we want you to be here, you're helping us get through this. In the end, when they got the phone call, I don't know if we could say that we were as happy as they were, but honestly, we must have come awfully close. I mean, Ian and I were both...
Must have been a tremendous feeling of relief.
Very much. And we got to be actually close friends with this family. We've kept in contact with them since. And we were very happy for them. People wrote letters to the editor afterwards, a couple of them, that said, how could the media be there in that living room with that family as that was going on? And both letters that I saw were responded later by the Ryden family, by Mr. Ryden, who said, they were not intruding, they were helping us get through that.
I'm wondering what the story was that you most badly screwed up on.
I was hoping somebody would ask that question. There have to be times when things just don't go right, as we all know, having worked in the newsroom.
Well, I could give a real recent example. Just this past weekend, I was doing a story about where there was a shooting over the weekend after a party, a late-night party that had been going on. And I wrote the story, turned it into the editor, and I said there had been, the police say that people in this house had been drinking heavily for several hours before the fight broke out and the shooting started. Well, I handed it to the editor, and as I'm on the air watching the story as it actually aired, I noticed that the picture of the house that they put over my voice saying, heavy drinking in this house, was a different house than the one that it actually took place. And things like that happen, and what can you do? I mean...
What happens when you get someone who doesn't want to talk to you? I know many of you, like Mark and I've been in this situation before. What happens if a team loses a game after one of the Twins' losses? Maybe one of them didn't want to talk to you. What do you do? Because you know the viewers want to hear what's going on, and they don't know what's happening in the locker room.
It's a ritual that you go through every time there's a loss. There are certain guys on the team you know will talk to you in a loss, certain guys on the team you know won't, and you always ends up that the guy who blew the game is one of the guys who won't talk. So what you have to do is you go to them, you ask, their initial response 9 times out of 10 will probably be no. Then you say, listen, I've got a job to do, and part of your job is really responding to what I have to do, and that rationale usually works.
Hard to convince them of that sometimes, though.
But it usually works.
What about you, Tom? You ever made any enemies? I mean, you know, you do investigative reporting. I mean... I remember the meat scam thing. I'm sure you don't go there to buy your bratwurst anymore or anything.
Well, fortunately, that store is closed, but by the very nature of what we do, when I show up on your doorstep, it's not going to be a very pleasant day for you.
So if Tom shows up on your doorstep, you better go the other way. In a moment, we'll continue. We'll talk about how technology has drastically changed the world in which these people work each and every day. We'll continue in just a moment.
Ringing in the new year with a bang at Sun Valley Waterbed. It's our biggest sale of the year. Your chance to get the best in beds at once-a-year savings. New Year's Day from 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. You'll save up to 50% on waterbeds, bedroom furniture, waveless mattresses, Soma beds, comforters, sheets, everything. These are absolutely the lowest prices of the year. So start your new year with a bang. Get the best in beds at once-a-year savings. New Year's Day only at Sun Valley Waterbeds.
30 seconds away.
What precautions should people living around the site take?
Eyewitness News has just learned the EPA is investigating.
They operate another plant about 10 miles down the road.
I need to know how you got the file. They've got to be accurate.
Are you worried about how this is going to affect your children?
Stand by remote.
Tonight about the dumping of hazardous waste, and we begin with a team report.
Through the years, the mothers of America have had a kind of medical training.
Next.
They've learned from countless doctors and pharmacists that the way to take care of a cough is with Robitussin. And now at home, the mothers of America are putting this advice to work.
Next.
Robitussin, recommended by Dr. Mom. Which Robitussin is right for you? Ask your doctor or pharmacist.
A lot of accident claims never get a fair hearing because many people think you have to be rich to have a lawyer. But it can cost you plenty to settle your own claim, and you don't have to. At Hyatt Legal Services, we took the fear out of legal fees. Before you sign something you don't understand, come in and talk to one of our lawyers. We'll help you fight for what you're entitled to. I'm Joel Hyatt, and you have my word on it. We took the fear out of legal fees across the country and in your neighborhood.
Last January on Twin Cities Live, we had a guest on, and we got unbelievable response to his appearance. A man whose name is familiar to many people that live in the Twin Cities. A very caring man whose care and concern for others has touched the lives of many people. His name is Percy Ross, and once again, we will have him on our show, along with some of the people whose lives he has changed as a result of his generosity. If you have a special need that you think Percy Ross may be able to help you with, write to him in care of Twin Cities Live, Post Office Box 23500, Minneapolis, Minnesota 55423. Now, Percy will answer some of these letters on our show. Also, if you'd like to come down and be part of our studio audience and meet Percy in person, the number to call for the January 7th Twin Cities Live is 641-1298. We are visiting with members of the Eyewitness News reporting staff this morning. Technology has changed things so dramatically for all of us that work within this business, the way we do stories. Mark, you have a favorite story that we're going to take a look at. The technology. We can do things today that were unthinkable even 4 or 5 years ago.
Things are getting smaller. That's the whole key to this whole thing. And the story that I had the rare opportunity to do what photographers only do best, and that's shoot videotape. This is a story of a woman who, Northwest pilot, a woman who is also a stunt pilot, and I took a ride with her in that plane, and
hopefully before lunch.
Actually, it was after breakfast, and I'm holding this camera right here. It's about the size of a home video camera, which is about a third of the size of the actual cameras we shoot regular videotape with, and I'm literally sitting like this, holding the thing. I won't do it again because I learned that photographers will tell you, don't close this eye when you're looking through the lens here, or, well...
you get a little ill.
Breakfast came up, I'll tell you what.
Oh, did you get a little sick?
I couldn't go again. I'm not doing this job ever again. You're shooting my videotape. I'm not doing this again. But anyway, the point is, the camera was so small that I could hold it, shoot it, Perfect.
How has technology made things easier or harder on all of you in covering all of it?
We can go live from any place. You know, in the past year, I went live in Detroit. I went live from Raleigh, North Carolina. I went live from Colorado Springs, Colorado, in addition to being all over the 5-state area here.
Well, almost any place, right, Dave?
Well, yeah. Sometimes
just to
in your
mention
own
something-
backyard, it's the most difficult. This morning, I was going to do a live shot for our 6 a.m. newscast on a peace rally down in downtown Minneapolis, but I think the weather did something to our minicam truck and froze the mast, and we couldn't get a signal out. So sometimes you are bound by the technology, even though it is superb technology and is getting better every year. Sometimes it just, there's, you know,
So Mother Nature, basically, we had $500,000 worth of junk sitting on the street there
Exactly,
because of the temperatures, Tom?
Give you an example of technology and the questions about whether or not we have the wisdom to use it. Sometimes you have these windows for satellite time, and you can't come to a story until, let's say, 5 or 10 after the hour, because you don't have the earlier windows. And yet, any other day, it would be the lead story. That affects the way we do business.
One quick question as far as your talents and how the job has changed. In the past, when film was used, and in the beginning of videotape, it was basically go out, package a story, bring it back, edit it, put it on the air. Now, more often than not, all of you, Mark and all of the news reporters, are called on to perform live. How has that changed for you?
Live not just for our own station, but live also sometimes for stations around the country. You'll get finished doing a live report for Stan and Ruth or Mark and Angela, and then they'll say, stand by for Tampa, St. Petersburg, and you'll be talking to Marty and Jeff, you know, and you'll toss to them and give basically the same report, because we're all hooked up by the News Star network, which is based here at KSTP, and anybody could take one of our signals, you know, just right after the other. That's really strange to do, but...
It's amazing that local stations in the United States for the last couple of years have had better live news gathering capabilities than the networks have within the United States. We can hook up, we can go live from virtually any place in the country within a matter of a couple of hours, where the networks didn't have that capability.
And we are kind of proud of that. There's a changing power structure between affiliates and the network, and KSTP is one of the driving forces for that, and that's a lot of fun.
I can remember the days not too long ago. Remember the old phoners?
Yeah.
When we talked to people on the phone, a reporter on the phone. Good morning. Talking of the phone, you're on Twin Cities Live. Go right ahead.
Hello?
Yes, go ahead.
I have a question for all the cast members. Do they have do they have hard times telling children's stories?
They have hard times telling what?
Telling children's stories.
Yeah.
It's the hardest thing in the world to interview a child.
Yes, I found that out many times on this program.
How do you feel? You sure you feel that way? Sure.
I have a problem. Well, medical stories about children are very tough for me. I did a lot of liver transplant stories, and then I had a child of my own, a 2-year-old son, and I remember after he was born, I did a story about a 1-year-old baby that was dying for lack of a liver transplant, and it was just a smiling, jaundiced, totally yellow baby, but smiling and outgoing and loving, and I lost it at that point. I had never felt very much until you see your own child in that situation. You realize just how agonizing this must be.
I want to get all of you to talk about how you think your job affects the lives of people that watch your reports. But Kevin, I know in your particular instance with Thursday's Child, in fact, this morning in the 6 a.m. news we ran a story, 30 children's lives were drastically affected by the story that you do every
I think
week.
one of the reasons that I got into this business was I wanted to feel as though I could make a difference, that there's so much need for greater understanding and information that I wanted to be a catalyst for that. But as it has sort of turned out, this is what some of the other stuff we do, maybe it doesn't really affect anyone, but this affects people. These are children who, for whatever reason, do not have parents, do not have families. I feel very strongly about this issue, that there is a family for every child, and it is part of our mission with the Thursday's Child program to help children and those families link up, and it's a very important thing that we do. And anybody that's watching, I can never miss a chance to get in a plug. People who adopt these children, they're just like we are, they're not saints, and there is room in many families for an older child, a handicapped child, and I really definitely urge people to think about adopting those children. I can never miss a chance to.
And we'll continue in just a moment. We have to take a break. We'll be right back.
Hey, I hated to feed the grandkids.
That's because he's a lousy cook.
Cute. But then I discovered Heinz 57 sauce. It's not just for steak. That tangy flavor makes a delicious dip for chicken nuggets, and the kids love it.
He makes great nuggets. It's not him. It's the Heinz 57 sauce.
Hi there. How are the nuggets in 57 sauce?
Delicious. Heinz 57 sauce. More than a steak sauce, a heck of a lot more.
Come in to Video Update. You'll find thousands of great movies you'll love to watch. We're located throughout the Twin Cities. There's a Video Update near you. Now, for a limited time, this Video Update Celebrity Savings Book is free when you become a celebrity. Over $200 in savings at restaurants like Perkins, Pizza Hut, Rax, plus North Stars Games, Canterbury Downs, and much more. A great value. So stop by the Video Update near you and become a celebrity. Start your savings now.
The Contour Chair Company presents You Get the Phone.
I got the phone.
I got the phone. And you can get your free phone, too. This $50 value Panasonic telephone, yours absolutely free. To receive it, just preview Contour chairs before you buy any chair. Then, even if you don't buy your new easy chair from Contour, Contour will send you this brand new Panasonic telephone free. No reasonable offer will be refused on the custom-made classic Contour chair of your choice.
I got the phone.
Now, you get your free phone, too. Call to get free by mail your free coupon redeemable for your free Panasonic phone and this free Contour chair catalog. Plus details on our Model 535 that's so inexpensive it actually costs hundreds of dollars less than any of these nationally advertised lounge chairs. Call for your free phone coupon now.
Call 1-800-228-5333. That's 1-800-228-5333, toll free. Call 1-800-228-5333.
I want to remind you that tonight at 11 o'clock, Mark, 11 o'clock tonight, hosted by Mark Sapelsa, will be Eyewitness News in Review, 1987, a complete look at all the stories. And also, preceding that program at 10:35, Twin Cities Live Review. We'll look back at some of the surprising moments that have happened on this program in the past year. So 10:35, Twin Cities Live, and 11 o'clock, Eyewitness News in Review. Thank you all for being with us today. And do you think much about how your job affects people that are watching you? Does that enter into your mind much at all?
I always wonder right after I say something on the air, because as a sportscaster I get to be a little more opinionated than everybody else. I just can't wait to see if somebody called in and say, boy, that bum had no right saying that.
I just wanted, before we run out of time here, we have to let you know that Kevin Berger's parents are here. Right? You are?
Al Berger.
Al and
Jill Berger.
You're just proud as punch, aren't you? Oh, this is right, your sister.
Yes. Molly Irasusta.
And did you ever think that you'd have a daughter grow up to be a big, powerful television journalist in a major market?
No, not really. But accommodations for guests on Twin Cities Live, provided by the new Whitney Hotel, located city side of the Mississippi overlooking St. Anthony Falls. Henderson chauffeured Cadillacs provide limousine transportation for the guests of Twin Cities Live. Henderson's offers the largest selection of color, style, and service in the 5-state area. Hair and makeup provided by Take 5, 504 North 1st Avenue in the Butler Building.
Not a lot of time, but go ahead.
I was wondering, you can report like on adopted kids, but what about the victims of child abuse kids?
That's the sort of thing that is really frequently in the news, and I think that this is another case where the media has shed a lot of light on a problem, and I think that has educated a lot of people about something. A lot of things that used to be in the closet not talked about, now it's on the 6 o'clock news.
Once again, a reminder, Eyewitness News and Review tonight at 11 o'clock. Where was my other question over here? You had one, go ahead.
I was going to ask about the local issue with the cruising on Central and how you felt about how the police force handled that.
Well, we only have 10 seconds, so let me just take this opportunity to say thank you and to wish all of you a Happy New Year. Be very, very safe and careful tonight on New Year's Eve. We'll see you Monday.